Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Our guest today is Chloe Maleski. Chloe is a mindset and mental performance coach supporting professional, collegiate, and high school athletes with mental fortitude, cognitive performance, stress management, and mindfulness. As a former Division I scholarship runner at Duke University, she continues to walk the talk as a competitive athlete. She brings a unique breadth of experience that extends beyond her clinical expertise and personal experience as an athlete. While earning her master's in psychology at Pepperdine University in Los Angeles, she's worked for a health coaching company and worked as a personal trainer in order to further her knowledge of the strong connection between the mind and the body. This helps her provide her clients with a holistic approach to well-being and performance. Chloe understands firsthand the significance of cultivating a championship mentality, resiliency, and mental strength, and has curated a best-in-class program dedicated specifically to athletes who want to optimize their performance. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. By the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Our show is proudly brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute, an accredited educational provider with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. This means that our graduates can become eligible to sit for the NBHWC credentialing exam to become a board-certified health and wellness coach. Check out primalhealthcoach.com/level2 to learn about our new advanced coaching course taught by me that will nudge you out of your comfort zone, launch you into coaching mastery, and qualify you to sit for the board certification exam. Laura is going to share a little bit more about what we teach and how at the end of today's show. In the meantime, let's get on with the conversation, and please enjoy our time with our friend Chloe Maleski. Hey, Chloe, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here with both of you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you too. So we are, Chloe's a friend of ours. We know Chloe quite well. And she's a practicing health coach, which honestly is like kind of our favorite type of interview to do sometimes. We love talking to health coaches doing their thing out there in the world because every one of us is doing something so unique and different. So we're going to talk about what you specifically do in the health coaching space, Chloe, but to kind of bring everybody listening up to speed, we like to start with a 3 to 5 minute origin story. So take it away.
All right. Here I go. So I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. I have 3 brothers, and that's an important part of the story, I think. I played all the sports, trying to keep up with my brothers, and I really found an avenue with running because it didn't take a lot of equipment, and there wasn't any politics involved. And it was like, if you run fast, they're going to see a time, and you're going to get to the next level. So I saw that as an avenue out of my small town, and I took advantage of it. And I just kept running, but I didn't really think about what that meant after. And once I got to college, and that I would have to continue running at that high level. So I got to Duke, and I was now coming from being a big fish in a small pond. I was now a minnow in the ocean. I was surrounded by the best of the best, not only in the classroom, but on the track as well. And that was a huge identity crisis because it's like, this is my identity. This is who I am. I'm an athlete. I'm a runner. I'm a good student, and now I didn't feel any of those things. So that was really challenging. I was injured my entire career at Duke, basically. And it was truly because of stress. Like I think I was a strong runner. There was nothing, it was stress fractures. It was just overstimulation in every aspect of my life and not knowing how to manage or handle it. So then I graduated. And I continued to run because I just didn't know what else to do. It's like, okay, this is what I do. I don't necessarily enjoy it anymore. I don't know where this is leading me. But I had familiarity with the weight room now because I was always cross training because I was injured. That being said, it was distance training. So it was like, glute bridges, but never lifting heavy weights. It was always like minimal, let's prevent injury. And so then I started lifting more. I kind of got introduced to CrossFit, And that was a huge shift because I also had a lot of body image issues during my college career. Always see me feeling and looking way bigger than most distance runners. So you guys have seen me. I don't look like a typical distance runner that you'd see. I've always had this build, and that was really hard for me to negotiate because you get told over and over again that you don't look like what you're doing, and mentally it gets to you. You're like, okay, maybe I can't run a sub 17 5K, like, you know, because people are telling me that I look like a 100-meter runner. So that was something that I was always working on within my own like battle and mind. And then let's see, got to LA and I was introduced to Mark Sisson.
Woohoo!
Actually, a friend from Duke met him and was like, Chloe, I feel like you guys would really, like, you're very aligned and you should meet with him. And he told me about all the businesses he had. And one of them was the health coaching business, Primal Health Coach. And I was really interested in that because of the behavior change. And now in retrospect, looking back at it, you know, me having all these body and nutritional issues, like we didn't really have a lot of support in that realm. So I think I also saw this as an avenue to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started working for Primal Health Coach. And I also just want to say how lucky I feel to have you two as colleagues there, because that's been a huge part of my journey too, having two strong women that are entrepreneurs and businesswomen, you know, in my circle. You know, people always talk about how important it is who your circle is. And I feel really lucky that I have two role models such as yourselves. So Primal Health Coach, took the course, learned all about nutrition. And that really, I saw the changes in myself, in my, not only in my body, but in my mental. So that was huge. But I also realized that I was more interested in the psychology of it all. Like, why are people choosing to hire a health coach? What is bringing them to this point? What are those struggles? What's their long-term why? It's not just a trip in Mexico. It's that I want to look good in a bathing suit. There's much more behind everything. So I went back to school and got my master's in psych. And the aha moment was a behavioral psychologist saying that she works with athletes but having no athletic background. And basically, like, the way she was talking about, she's like, he caught the ball. And I was like, well, if this woman is working with athletes and having success, this seems like a perfect niche for me. And bring it back, like, just being surrounded by brothers that are all athletes, and that always just kind of being the core of my identity and what I love. And I just think that sports teaches you everything about life if you let it. And so I love being in that realm. And now I feel more aligned than I ever have. Everything's kind of connecting, all these relationships with that I made at Duke from the athletic community, that even though I wasn't thriving as an athlete, I was making these connections with these athletes, and it seems so valuable now. So my practice now is mental skills training for athletes specifically, but it's holistic. You know, as you get older, you realize how everything's connected. And so even though I'm doing mental skills training, I have this background in nutrition and personal training and all the things. So I'm able to kind of connect the dots there, which I think kind of sets me apart from a lot of other mental skills coaches, where it's just mindset, visualization, mindfulness, which is the core of my practice, but it also is able to spread into other realms. So.
Oh, I just love it. Congratulations, Chloe, on your journey so far, you know, because tell everyone how old you are.
I'm 27.
Yeah. Okay. So it took me, I was like 40, right? Before I really got my shit together and was like, what, you know, so what a gift to have found your passion and your purpose at such a young age. And, you know, chronologically, you're young, but to a certain degree, I've always felt you're a little bit of an old soul, you know, and have, you know, a maturity look to be able to connect those dots for yourself and have these aha moments. I know everybody listening can relate to your struggles over your own identity and body image issues. You know, knowing my husband and his athletic background, I totally hear you on what you say about your entire identity wrapped up in kind of what you do as an athlete and but what happens if you're not happy there?
Right.
Talk about a crisis, you know? So we tell this to our listeners all the time, that your experience has such tremendous value. And your story right there is a prime example of it.
Yeah. I think something that coaches should remember is that when you're being paid as a coach, it's not just your education. It's not just your Primal Health Coach cert. It's every experience you've had in your life and everything you've been through to get these. Like, I know and I appreciate you praising me for connecting this at 27, but there was a lot of confusion and dark times in terms of what am I doing? This doesn't, I had a really hard time negotiating working with athletes because I was like, Chloe, are you just hanging on to this athlete identity? Like, but then I came to realize that that would be hypocritical of me to not work with athletes, because the whole issue I had with athletics was only being seen as an athlete in sports. But I want to foster the whole human, and an athlete is a human, and looking at it that way and really supporting every aspect of their life and knowing that it's going to benefit them on and off the court.
Wow.
Love it.
Foster the whole human. I really like that, because I do feel like, I do feel like folks, especially who are pretty successful in sport of any kind at a young age, we do hold on to that identity for quite a long time, and to the detriment of really connecting to the wholeness of our humanness. So I love that you do that. Now you describe yourself as you do mental skills training for athletes, and you kind of describe that like that just rolled off the tongue for you as though that's a thing that we should all know about. I don't know what that is. So can you tell me what that is? Because you mentioned mindset, visualization, and mindfulness.
Yeah. So when I first started getting into this space, I started talking to a lot of sports psychologists for teams, like professional teams. And then I realized that there was actually this break. So some are getting licensed as psychologists and working more on a clinical side. And then some are doing more just mindset, mental skills. Now I'd say in sports, the mental skills is much more approachable because it's looking at working on the mental side as a strength rather than a weakness. So that's always kind of been the thing why people are hesitant to go to therapy or see a psychologist, because they're like, well, I feel like I'm mentally tough. I don't need that.
Right.
It's like, no, let's reframe. This is actually going to be an asset to you. You're going to be playing better because you're working on your brain. All that time you're spending benching, running routes, the same thing needs to be done with your head. So let's do that. Let me be a mental skills coach. Let's work on that. Let's make sure you're prepared that in any moment on the field, you're going to be able to excel at your best.
Oh, okay. So rather than like fixing a broken brain in the clinic, it's like, let's train it up to be a next level mind. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Why? That's so strange that that's so overlooked though, isn't it?
It's too, like the culture of each sport is different too. And that's what I'm learning because I'm talking to people in a lot of different, in different sports. And, I'd say baseball is ahead of the game. Like the Red Sox has 4 mental skills coaches. Whereas football, it's still usually just a psychologist, and they don't, so you have to kind of find the pulse and the culture of each team and each sport and go from there. So it's a lot of navigating.
Yeah, but what an important differentiator and a symbol of your understanding of your niche on how to frame. I heard you use the word reframe, how to frame what this is going to do for them. Because I think this is really common, certainly among athletes, also among a lot of men I know, and women, but mostly some of the men I know that I know could really benefit from somebody to talk to. I don't care if it's a psychologist, a social worker, a coach, what have you. But the ... or the assumption is that there's some sort of weakness there, or I'm somehow broken. But having the, I guess, awareness of just reframing this as a strength, as some sort of training rather than some sort of treatment, is genius, and thinking how to reframe. And so I think that's fantastic. Can you give us some examples of some of maybe the exercises and the way what these exercises are like?
Yeah. So
skills training.
I'd say in sports, it's really about meeting the athlete where they are. So for instance, like you may think mental skills training looks like meeting someone in a room with a nice vibe and you're talking about things. But like at the pro level, a lot of times it's conversations on the sideline. It's getting lunch one day and just chatting, because you have to meet them where they are and where are they comfortable to open up? And in that kind of setting, usually not, to be honest. Still, there's still that stigma about, oh, I'm talking about my mental and this could be a weakness. But so it's a lot about meeting them where they are. My grant proposal for my final project was mindfulness in athletes. And basically what this was talking about was, traditionally we use cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're trying to control your thoughts rather than accept. So when you're on a football field and you have a million things going on, having these internal arguments, if anything, is draining more energy. So shifting that and making it mindful and being as present as possible and accepting the moment and being able to play present and then move on to the next play is a game changer, literally. So that was what my grant proposal was on. And so that's been kind of the base of my practice, is mindfulness with the athletes and having them connect to each moment and being more present. And then I'd say visualization, the same thing. You've had a few psychologists on the show before, and the episode where she's talking about the lemon test.
Oh yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget which episode it was, but it's similar.
Like Shine Bomb, I think. Yeah.
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 But it's the same thing with sports. Like, picture yourself throwing that pass, picture yourself making that catch, but let's not just picture it. Let's really go there. Let's really, really go there. That being said, it really varies. And so I have had some athletes come to me for more nutrition, but then it always kind of shifts long-term into mindset. So it's really just about meeting them where they are.
Yeah, I like that. Like physically meeting them where they are. I think about like mindset, mindfulness. You kind of have to be in situ. Like it's easy. Well, it's not easier, but it just makes more sense. Like I'm on the field where I apply my trade as an athlete, and so you can really go and have the full experience of that mindfulness journey, because it's not like you're sitting lying on a couch in a therapist's office trying to like invent that makes a lot of sense. I think that there's a ton of value in doing that with athletes. You mentioned football quite a lot. So is that like, I just want to get a sense of what kinds of athletes you're working with.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't expect football to be the sport that I would focus on, but for some reason, it's kind of been where I've been having the most conversations and had the most interest in recently. And I think it's part of that is probably the fact that there does need to be a culture shift in that. Like it's almost kind of the most challenging in my opinion right now, because you're literally going to war on the field. So to open up and use your vulnerability or your vulnerability as a strength is exceptionally challenging. But I think if we are able to break through, it would be huge. So football.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because you said like baseball is kind of ahead of the curve. And so like one of the sports that I played to a high level when I was a young athlete was baseball. And I loved baseball because it was it's a team sport, but there's this like major individual component to it. Like you play a position, that's your job. And every sport is like that, but baseball kind of has that sort of individual vibe within the team environment more than other sports I think do. And maybe that's why baseball has been ahead of the curve, because it's like, man, these guys are out on the field playing their very specific role, standing there waiting for most of the game for something to happen. Where football is like really just like, go. So that makes a lot of sense. And plus to your point, like it's such a physically just like brutal, I guess, it's so physical forward. It's so physical forward. Maybe you would think that baseball is more of like a thinking sort of game and football is more of a doing game. Do you have any plans to I'm just putting this out there. I mean, let's put this out there, but like hit up some professional teams and like, are professional football teams starting to explore this mental skills training stuff?
Yeah, so they are. I could see myself consulting for a team or maybe being hired by a team for a season. I'm still open. I work with 2 professional athletes right now, coaching them one-on-one. And then all my other clients are middle school, high school. I really love working with the younger age, because you see the light bulb go off, and it's less of, you don't have to meet them, you meet them where they are, but they're just a sponge. They just want to hear it all, and they're so excited to like connect these dots, where, you know, you've already been programmed for a while and you've already made it to the high level. So why do you need a mental skills coach? You've already made it. And so it's more, you have to do more reframing of like, no, this is going to help you to get to the next level. Let's utilize your brain. Let's do it. But it is interesting because it's still some of the same problems. So like, for example, one of my girls, she is a basketball player and she was going to this big showcase. And now with social media, she can see everyone that's going to the showcase that's from California, New York, and she's psyching herself out because of social media. So that's been a huge part, social media. And then you get to the pro level, and, you know, fantasy football is now huge. And so a player could have a great game, and he's like, you know, he's getting all these DMs about you're the man because he had a great game. But then the next week, the plays weren't made for him, and he's getting all this like hate DMs. So, you know, how do you deal with that? How do you work through that? How do you stay present and handle that? So it's interesting that social media has definitely been a thread at all levels and how it's affecting the players mentally.
Scourge.
Oh my gosh. And not even just athletes, you know. Brad, my husband, who again, mental is his game. You know, you guys know he's suffered from anxiety he had to just take it off his phone. It's just literally bad for him. You know, he's got that addictive side to his personality. So I have to imagine, first of all, I definitely think we're going to see, if we haven't already, research on what social media is doing to our youth, you know, from the standpoint of, in a lot of ways. And so I love that you're addressing that, but.
Even in one of my physiological psych class, they were talking about that even if your phone, they talked about the detriment of social media for young people, especially, and like your phone's face down on the table right here, it's still using 10% of your brain the entire time because you're thinking about what could be going on. And just the fact, you know, coming from the primal approach and primal connection, how you think about how your tribe was 10 people or something, and now you're worrying about 30,000 people and what they're thinking of you all the time. That can't be healthy. That can't be good. No. So it's wild. And it's definitely something to work through.
You know, and your work with these younger athletes, I just think, what a tremendous value and a gift for a young athlete to be able to work with somebody like you on two fronts. First of all, to be able to achieve what they want to achieve, whatever that is, whether it's going on to play college sports or professional sports or whatever. But, you know, one of the things we loved at our gym, and my husband worked with a couple of travel soccer teams. He loved working with these kids because he knew 98% of these kids were not going to get past high school sports, right? 95 or whatever. And then those that go to college, the vast majority of them are not going to do anything more with it. So the best thing he could do is to just train stronger kids. Right. And he knew what the mental strain and the emotional strain can do to a young psyche. And he knew what it did to him. And he really wanted to help provide support for these kids. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, but I would love to hear a little bit about how you're working with some of these kids, just from an emotional and psychological level on their own development, on, you know, focusing on the prize, whatever it is their goal is. But at the end of the day, they just need to be happy, productive, healthy, mentally loving, and productive human beings.
Yeah, it comes a lot. So when I say athlete, I'm saying human. Like athlete is my niche, but my whole motivation was that I don't feel like I fostered other parts of myself, and I just completely had these speed goggles on of I'm going to be a fast runner and that's going to get me. And it was very useful at that time, but I really wish I had a soundboard to kind of reroute some of these narratives or retract some of these narratives. So that's something we focus on a lot, is like, if I have an athlete whose dad didn't show up to the game or something, and she's saying, oh, he doesn't love me. It's like, oh no, he had work. That doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Like these things that end up spiraling because they don't talk about it can now be retracked and not turn into this long story that can plague you for a lifetime sometimes. So,
well, fantastic. I mean, on that topic though, I don't know if this is like mean or to say, but I mean, Laura kind of touched on it, and I was thinking about it too, and I think you touched on it too, Chloe. It's like when I went to university to be a track athlete as well, I was like, what's the end game? Like, I'm not going to be a professional long jumper. That's not going to be my job. Like, this is seriously, this is ending. And then what am I? And so I think about these young middle school athletes who so much of their identity is wrapped up in being an athlete. And I also want to talk a little bit about the body image stuff, just because you kind of did bring it up, but maybe we can kind of put a pin in that for later. But like, you talk about you foster the whole human. Do you find that that's hard with young athletes, for them to realize that their identity isn't just as an athlete? Like, because I think if I go back in time to when I was 15 years old, if somebody said, hey, Erin, we're going to need you to like shore up some other, skills and identities here, I'd be like, no, this is my identity. Mm-hmm. This is it. Like there have been a reluctance for me to have, broadened my identity, because we get so hooked into our identities, don't we?
100%. Yeah. I would say that's part of the reason why I enjoy working with a younger population, is because I can share my experiences and my story, and they kind of have that light bulb and get how everything is connected, and how them focusing on other parts of themselves can actually make their game better. And we talk through that and work on it. But a lot of it, some of the athletes, so a basketball player, he's trying to play D1 college high level, and he's in 9th grade, and it's like, you're playing basketball 4 hours a day. How do we make this sustainable? What's the long game goal? And we're reminding ourselves of the end game. And that's why, no, let's play basketball for 2 hours. Let's recover for 2 hours too, if that's what we're doing, and making sure that we're creating sustainable practices to get them to where they want.
So in that example, the end game is professional or college athletics. And I guess my question is, is there something to be said for setting these young people up for life after sport? Or is that like, do you know what I mean? Like, or is that touchy?
I think I try to do that because I felt like that was missing. And that's part of the reason why I got into it. It was like, I was just looking at myself from this one lens, and this is who I am. And I wish other parts of me were developed and, we're able to evolve more. But because I just put a lid on it and just focused on running. So I do try to, we talk about their interests in terms of what they want to study, and just, navigating life and figuring out what they like, and more importantly too, what they don't like. Like, I think huge, a helpful thing that we don't talk about enough is figuring out what you don't like is just as helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a delicate balance, because even professional athlete, it's rare for a professional athlete to spend more than a decade, more than 10 years professionally in that sport. It's even shorter for certain, like football, for example. I think we were Googling one day, because I think I was asking my son and my husband, like, what's the average tenure for professional football? It's like 3 years. It's not long, right? So you may have this end game of 3 years, but these are people in their 20s entering a professional sport. They've got probably more than half the rest of their life ahead of them. And it's a bit of a balance, right? So if you're focused on giving it all, you're all making it to be whatever, collegiate athlete, professional athlete, but beyond that, so you're training for that to be the best you could possibly be. But at the same time, God, you don't want to ruin yourself 100%. For the life that comes afterwards.
Right. I think that just comes with getting to know yourself more intimately. So then when that chapter ends, when your football career ends, I was just talking to a football player, and he played for the Broncos, and, now he's a coach, but he also is an entrepreneur, and he's doing all these things. And we talked about how he developed those other areas while in football, and like seeing the big picture. And, that's what's really great, is having these conversations with the pro athletes, especially, and them seeing the value in this and saying, this is so needed. I'm so happy you're doing this. Like, I really wish I had this for me when I was younger, especially. So that's been really powerful for me. I will also note, talking about all this, I think, Erin, it reminded me when you're like, oh, what's the end game? So I also had this realization that I didn't want to be a pro athlete. I wanted to be a pro male athlete.
Exactly.
So I was like, when I saw myself when I was younger and I was picturing it, it was like, I'm picturing me like balling out in the NBA,
Exactly.
swaggy clothes, like, and then you realize that it's not really a possibility at the same capacity for female athletes. And so when I enjoy working with my female athletes and working through all of that, because, when COVID happened, there was all this hype around how, oh, well, the stadiums are empty, so this is really going to affect their play. And, for them, yeah, it might affect them a little bit, but let's also think about how many females have ever competed in a full stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the female soccer World Cup, like, championship, but that's about it. Like, I can't think of stadiums full for women in sports ever.
Tennis, maybe.
Tennis,
Exactly.
yeah,
Tops.
exactly. So, taking into account that and, people's own experiences and how it really varies depending on the person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so true. I had that exact same thought as I was taking the field for a baseball game, and it was like, this is it. I'm at the provincial level or whatever, playing at the national level. This is as good as it gets. Maybe the Olympics if I was really good, which, by the way, I wasn't good enough for that. Right? Like, what the hell's the point?
Yes.
Yeah. So for female athletes, we do have that little bit of a unfortunate sort of ceiling, the old glass ceiling. It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'd love your thoughts here. So we touched a little bit on kind of body image. And so I think there's two schools of thought here, because there is research out there that says that girls that participate in athletics do tend to have a better body image, actually. However, I think at a certain point that can go wrong, right? And what I'm curious about is it at a certain point, or is it by individual? Yeah. You know what I mean? Is it, I know that certain sports are probably more prone to issues like that, like gymnastics and things of that nature. Yeah. But so, yeah, I mean, I would love your thoughts, because on kind of what you think about that.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts here. So I'm actually doing a body positivity, I don't know if we're going to call it that yet, webinar with 2 Olympic swimmers who medaled at the Olympics, and then a former professional volleyball player, and then myself. And we're going to, dive into all this. So I'll link that here so people can check that out if they're interested. But we're opening up a whole other door here, because, you've probably heard of the Triad with, so it just comes back to putting so much emphasis on your body, because first of all, you're female, so there's that. And then you got the athlete, so that's a whole other pressure that it's like, oh, this is all my worth is my body and how my body's going to perform. And then again, you go into the characteristics of each sport. So I think it varies. So for me, distance running, it's just filled with a lot of eating disorders, this idea that the smaller you are, the lighter you are, the faster you're going to be. And it's infiltrated so deeply. And then the nutrition part is a whole other aspect, where it's like you're supposed to carb load before your long distance races. So then it's like creating these habits that are actually really, really detrimental for your health too, in a lot of ways. And you're pounding your body to the ground, people are running 80 miles a week and doing these like things that are just not sustainable. It's just toxic, first of all. But something that's been hard is like in the distance running community, there is all this like body positivity now and like showing other runners, but they're still so tiny. And it's like, okay, well, if you're saying this is a big runner, then I'm a dinosaur. Like, let's like talk about this. And that's something that's been frustrating, and honoring everyone's experience and knowing that they maybe feel big. And so it's good that they're talking about it, but also realizing that being mindful of the rest of the population that really doesn't look like that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on the triad, the female athlete triad. It would be disordered eating, amenorrhea, and bone density issues. These are the 3 parts that come with that. And it's like a staggering number of high school athlete females, like, well, actually, I think I read a study that even non-athlete high school girls have the female athlete triad. It's just, this whole body dysmorphia, eating disorder kind of scourge.
And also not to be fooled by someone's looks. Like, I'm transparent on here. Let's just get real. I didn't get my period till I was 20, and I still looked really, really healthy and way stronger, bigger than a lot of my teammates.
Ditto.
So just
I actually heard a point of view on that actually. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was like, it's almost like when you're kind of have, let's call it disordered. I know disordered is kind of a hot button word, but like when you have this kind of disorder, but you don't look like the stereotypical disordered person, it's even harder because it's like you're not disordering hard enough or something. You don't have enough street cred because I don't have my period either, even though I'm a big girl. I'm also starving myself. Like there's so much weirdness. It actually kind of makes me bummed that it still exists because like I'm like 20 years ago that was such a big deal and it still is. But I wonder if you, I mean, I guess it's hard to know if the tides are turning, but these conversations are what started. But I mean, you see people like, I'm going to just use the obvious example of like Serena Williams, who's a complete goddess, who's one of the greatest athletes in the world, never mind greatest female athlete, one of the greatest athletes in the world, and probably the one that all female athletes would look up to. Is like, someday I want to get to that status where they take the greatest female, that word, out of the the statement and just, but like a big strong woman, like I wonder if there's any shift. I mean, you tell us, like, what are you seeing? Are these young girls, are they open to exploring outside of what the traditional body shape or size is within their sport?
I think it comes down to the coach and the culture that's being created, and making sure to have in female sports, especially having a female role model. That I think most females have gone through something that involves body image, and having someone as a resource on that team, I think would change the culture dramatically. If they just ensured that every team had a female that had these kind of experiences that people could go to, I think that would change it. Because I mean, my college experience, I had a male coach for the first 3 years. And then I had a female coach the last year. I had a male coach all through high school. I think I only had male coaches through high school. So I just think that's interesting too, having this male figure. And then you're having, like in our sport too, we'd have to get weighed every so often, like, things like that. And then I did something interesting where because I was surrounded by a lot of close friends and teammates malnourishing themselves, I was like, you know what, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to eat everything in sight and prove that I can still run. Like but that wasn't healthy either. And I was eating junk and it didn't feel good. But it was my way of like coping and trying to, so.
Well, you touched on that like earlier in your origin story, like that the first time you really explored nutrition was after meeting Mark and enrolling in, and like, it's so wild that a high school and collegiate athlete has not like,
right.
That nutrition was never a thing until after.
And you know what's interesting, Erin, is that when I was in high school, I definitely had disordered eating and thoughts and things like that. And I was like, I remember thinking like, I can't wait to get to college, like especially a college like Duke, like they're going to be able to handle all that for me. I'm going to get like so much knowledge, or they're just going to like provide me with the right food that's going to help my body be great. And that was not the case at all. It wasn't. And, now that I think about that, I haven't spoken about this, I don't like out loud, but yeah, you would think
you
that
would
they would have like what we're putting in our body daily matters, especially if we're trying to perform at a high level physically and like a student athlete. Like, hello.
Yeah, it's a huge gap. It makes no sense. Yeah. It's literally half of the equation. Like, because you're as an endurance athlete, it's like, the body has to be able to do this for a long time, and the fuel partitioning system also has to be able to manage it. It's like, we'll just figure that.
It's mind blowing. But we had like one of our very, very first interviews was with Allie, right? Allie Watts from Allie Fitness, and I had asked her about just how much unhealthiness there is in fitness, and what she said was it's rampant. Right? There's a lot about kind of the nasty little secret in the fitness world is that there's a whole lot of unhealthy wrapped in there. And what's ironic is after I became a health coach, I wanted to be able to find a community of people that would be like my tribe, right? And that would give a shit about what they were eating and their health. And so I'm going to open a gym. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open a gym and all these people are going to hire me to be their health coach because they care and they're there to get their butts kicked. You know what? I mean, don't get me wrong. Over time that progressed, but I was astonished by how many people came into the gym and had zero interest in changing what they ate. It wasn't until they were really wrapped in there and really like listened to me enough, basically attended enough workshops and really realized, gosh, dang, I'm working so hard. I should see better progress. Maybe what Laura's saying, there's some truth to that. You know, it's almost like in the fitness world, there's this, it's like you have a free pass somehow.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it at FitCon, remember? And then, you know, this was I didn't talk about this in my origin story much, but I did personal training and group fitness training for my entire time in LA. And I always kind of I just felt like I wasn't being authentic by sharing this fitness stuff or trying to get into the fitness industry, because it's trademarked on your body and how you look and all these like superficial things. And I just couldn't get on board, because for me, when I'm anxious, the first thing I do is go for a run. And I'm not going on a run because I'm trying to lose weight. I'm going to like help my mental health and well-being. And I just felt like the industry in LA was opposite of that. And then I would get so frustrated because I'd show up to these workouts. I basically knew like all these fit Instagram models that have millions of followers, and I'd show up to these workouts and they look super fit. And then it comes to actual performance and it's like they can't do 3 push-ups, and I would be livid. And this is just competitive Chloe coming out, but I'm just like, really, like this is right. And so I was able to kind of pivot and be like, well, this is why I'm doing mental skills training and mental performance coaching and life coaching, because this is working through that and working on the whole person and the whole athlete, and not just this, oh, I look good so I can get paid on it.
I feel that way about like figure and bikini competitors a lot of the time, where it's like, I hesitate to call those fitness competitions. It actually makes me grouchy because there's no fitness required. It's just a dieting competition most of the time.
Right.
But like, I mean, that anybody listening who's liking what Chloe's doing and maybe has been in that space, I think that's a whole untapped market. Like women specifically who've been who starved themselves, painted themselves orange, and stood up on stage and got judged by a judge on their physical container and probably didn't win, because most of these people are not winning. They're coming in, I came in 5th out of 6 people or whatever. It's like, and then having to having your whole worth and being given a trophy because of the physical container that you're walking around in, irregardless of what that body could even do or how it functions. So damaging, I think. I don't know how or why people do that to themselves. I'd have to be so drunk to get up on stage in a bikini. Oh my God.
But you know what though? I think any of these things can have like for some people, like I've had girlfriends of mine that just wanted to do it once. They just kind of wanted to see what it was like. Can I get there? It's like I don't get it either, but they're over it now.
Are they though?
Yeah.
Are they? Okay.
They were both strength training athletes anyway. And they never really ate for leanness like that. They kind of wanted to see if they could get there, and they got there. They're like, I didn't like it. Like I did it once and whatever, I was proud of myself, but I don't want to live that way. And they knew that. Right. And I find the same thing with, I actually credit CrossFit with my ability to reframe what I think a healthy body looks like. Like I love the way muscles look on a woman, you know, that's sexy to me. And my husband, that's sexy to my husband, rather than in the past, it was this wafiness and looking, it's not, there's a difference between being lean and skinny, you know, and that CrossFit world changed that for me. But then you can go too far down that road and focus. There's a lot of people that still have body images that way, you know, they maybe just want to look bigger, or there's, you know, it's crazy to me. So I think any endeavor can be either have a positive effect, but if you go too deep down and, you know, but that's the whole mental side of it, I guess. Right.
Yeah. We're kind of just trading things off sometimes though, because it's like, you know, I think back to the early 2000s in the fitness industry, and the goal was to be striated and tiny. And now we're in this renaissance where it's like glutes, you know, that's all that matters. Just get your hip thrusts in. And for somebody like who doesn't have that body type, like I'm never going to have epic glutes. It's like, oh, dang, you know, oh man, I'm never going to measure. Like we're just always trading one aesthetic for another. Sometimes it feels like it's a treadmill.
Definitely agree with that. But I do think it's progress in some capacity, because I think just building strength is a mental thing too. So if you're doing that instead of just becoming like pushing yourself in this aerobic capacity constantly and making yourself weaker,
right?
You just see a little bit of progress. But I do agree it's kind of just a trade-off in some way.
Yeah. Anyway, we went down a weird garden path there, but let's get back to Chloe and Chloe's practice. So tell us how you work with people, like one-on-one predominantly, and what's the relationship like?
Yeah. So right now I'm in this phase where it's reps, the same way you get reps in with doing free throws or running routes. And it's one-on-one. I love working one-on-one with people. And it works. It's 4 calls. They can either do weekly or bi-weekly. And the calls are only 30 minutes. And it really varies. And like I said, it's meeting them where they are. And it's 12 weeks long. Like a lot of things came from, the health coaching sphere and the layout from there. But yeah, and I don't, it's all sports right now. It's middle school to collegiate to professional. And it's just me becoming masterful at what I'm doing and working with athletes and knowing how to show up for them.
Awesome. So first of all, walk us through a little bit about what that client experience is then. So what's your first session like with a young athlete, let's say?
Yeah. So you'd be surprised. I think that because there's such a gap in this sphere, it's almost like therapy for an athlete. Like they're like, oh, it's like a big sigh of relief. Like I have someone to talk to about this that understands sports and also can support me mentally and emotionally. So it really varies. Like, if it's a pro athlete, it could be talking about how I'm supposed to be providing for all these family members now that I'm making all this money, and like what the kind of stress that's creating. If it's a younger athlete, it could be, oh, my mom wants me to switch teams because she thinks I'm going to get more, I'm going to get more eyes on me if I'm with this more elite team, even though I'm going to have to travel 2 hours every weekday and I'm not going to be able to be doing homework. And how's that going to affect me if I'm not doing my homework? So it really varies depending on the client and the athlete. With female athletes too, it comes back to food sometimes and confidence and body image, much more in my like middle school and high school female athletes. And then with guys, it's more of a pressure that they feel. So it's interesting. It's great though. I love it. I love having a variety.
I think I have a client I need to send your way. Actually, she's going to university this fall to play rugby, but she's got like a gap year, and she worked with me because she understood that she had some really disordered her relationship with food was disordered because she had been a high school athlete, and we all know what that's like. And so she wanted to kind of get her relationship with food back on track. And the second half to her sort of goals is, and I want to be able to perform on the rugby field, which, coming from like honestly anorexia, where you're really catabolic, and going to play sport like rugby where you strong anabolic needs there. It's like I'm repairing her relationship with food, but she also wants to build strength and power and explosiveness and all those physical attributes, but also the mental toughness because that kind of eating disorder breaks you down. And so I feel like she'd be a good fit for you. I should send her your way.
I would love that. I have 6 spots left for me for 2021. So I would love that.
Wow, you're booked up already.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. I want to be a little fly on the wall. So let's say you're working with this young athlete and she's worried about changing teams and trying to get her homework done. Maybe there's a body, what kind of mental skills conversations are you having with somebody like that? Can you give us an example of kind of what that might look like?
Yeah. So I think it's first figuring out and navigating how she feels about it. So when this happened, like what was the first thing that came to your mind? How do you feel? Like, do you want to go to that team? Like, what does that look like for you? And kind of diving into that. And then it goes into, prepping these young student athletes with these skills like time blocking and things that, we wish we knew way earlier, and reminding of the long game. So, okay, we know that your goal is to go to a really good D1 school. And, you're picturing yourself. We do this visualization of like what the school looks like. What kind of things do you want your school to look like? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be warm? Like, we really go there. We get detailed. And is this going to support you to that end goal? So we kind of work backwards and go, okay, so this is where you want to end up. Let's work back. Is this going to be a good step? And let's do a pros and cons list. It's not rocket science, but it is powerful with these younger athletes when they haven't been exposed to some of these habits and protocols that they can take to really excel their life and make sure that they are fostering their whole selves and not just a basketball player.
Well, you start with feeling, and that honestly, for coaches listening, like that is what you want to connect to all the time.
Right.
As cheesy as it sounds, one of the questions I ask the most in my coaching sessions, and probably you do too, Chloe, is how does that make you feel? Tell me about how that feels.
Yeah. Because it's like, we don't let your brain confuse you. Let your body tell you. We talk about that. It comes right back to the nutrition, and it's like, what is this telling your body when you're eating something that's nourishing and supporting you versus something that that makes you feel kind of anxious and unwell and icky.
And athletes are probably pretty mentally strong people generally, and maybe I'm going to use the phrase type A, though that's not the right phrase. Almost like they want to micromanage their own experience through life, and they almost to the detriment of paying attention to their emotions. So really connecting them back to that, I think there's so much value. It's probably been overlooked for their entire athletic career.
Yeah, it's that balance, because some of the most successful athletes I work with, it's their superpower, but also their weakness, that they're able to kind of let some things go that shouldn't bother them, but then they won't even acknowledge some things that need to be acknowledged and could really help them and benefit them.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious how these athletes come to you. So I know you've been in LA and you were in the fitness realm. So I would imagine you have a lot of connections there, but I'm also curious with these younger athletes, I'm wondering what the impetus is there. Is it a parent, hopefully a thoughtful, caring parent that's like, something's not right here, my kid needs help? Or is it the kid kind of like, something's missing, I'm super stressed out, I need some help here? What have you found to be kind of the driver of that?
Yeah, so that's still kind of a delicate balance, because when you're working with a kid, but it's oftentimes it's their parents that are paying. So realizing that, but making sure that I'm transparent right away with the parent that whatever I'm working with their son or daughter about is going to stay between us, and they need to have trust in that. So that's first. And I'd say they're finding me. It's mostly word of mouth, to be honest. And then I'd say by being in LA and meeting a lot of athletes and just like really holding on to that identity, it's actually served me really well now, because I feel very connected still with all the former Duke athletes and then athletes I met in LA, and most of my friends were athletes, so it's been pretty seamless there. And yeah.
No, I just love that. Something, and I know I talk about them a lot, but something that I can relate to, just having been married to someone like Brad, who spent years almost regretting that lifestyle for so long, being able to turn that experience, those experiences that shaped you, that you were able to turn it into something you could learn from and help benefit others from. I mean, how powerful and empowering that must feel.
Yeah. Two things I want to add there. I think we didn't touch on it completely, but the strength training too. And that's why I include that in my practice. And my website will be launched probably by the time this is aired. So that's great.
Cool.
But that reframe of like strong and capable versus big and whatever ambiguous weird things I was telling myself in my head was so huge. So like focusing on the strength portion has been paramount. And then beyond that, something I'm still working through is like right now I'm only working with clients that I can afford to work with me. So it's, and I have a little bit of trouble with that, because it's like I want to help we feel that as coaches,
Mm-hmm.
natural thing. So my long-term goal would be to open a facility in LA, in like an underserved community part of LA, and have a center where we're connecting these dots earlier between like mind, body, like nutrition, mindset. And so that's the long-term goal.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm actually thinking of starting a program where like the pro athletes I work with, maybe funding an athlete that wouldn't be able to if they find the value in it. So that's something I'm working and playing.
Yeah, like a scholarship opportunity.
Yeah.
How cool. All right. What is this website? What's it? Well, first of all, like, is it, what's the web address when it goes live?
growwithchloe.com.
growwithchloe.com. Very cute.
I saw your new logo. Super cute.
But it's GRO with Chloe. That's so cute. And then, so like, because you dropped this whole, my website should be done by the time this is live, as you were talking about strength training. Is there going to be like workouts or something on there? Like what's going to be on the website?
So I'm still navigating this because it's like, I don't want to be offering too much, but I do, I have my certs in health coaching, so nutrition stuff, and I have my certs in personal training. And truly, I think they're all related. Like I don't think we can talk about one without acknowledging the other at least. And I think it goes back to kind of meeting the athlete where they are. So maybe they're coming to me because of strength training and they want to work on that, but knowing that it most likely is going to turn into mindset stuff because it's the base of it for my practice. So I'm offering like, let me meet you where you are. What do you feel like you're lacking, and where can we really take advantage and grow?
Cool. Grow with Chloe.
Yeah. And I have, I love Grow with Chloe, but I also I created it's Grow with Chloe, wellness and performance. And it was little things like, does wellness or performance come? Because I feel like I'm working with athletes and it's about performance, but you can't perform without being well. So let's put wellness first. And, all those like intricacies about how to.
I know. Yeah, we really do get granular on like the words we're using in our tagline. And I think it's an important exercise for the coach to go through. I doubt that the client is as specifically granular on the words we've chosen, but I think it's important for us to do that. Like, what am I about here? And wellness has to underpin everything for sure. Performance.
Yeah. And defining what that means too. I think there are some words in this realm that I think are kind of vague and overused and mean different things to different people, you know? Because we've talked about this on several podcasts, when people like the definition of health is just the absence of disease. Like, just that's the definition. Right. But a lot of other people don't think of it that way. But if you think of it from a medical community standpoint, that's what health means, is the absence of disease. So the conventional medical paradigm is about eliminating disease, which depending on the disease, they're not very good at. Right. And part of the reason is because if all you ever do is treat the disease, you never really become well. And wellness is the antidote for illness.
Right.
Right. And it can be the antidote for so many things, including mental growth. I mean, and just to like continue to beat a dead horse, like your physical wellness and your mental wellness go hand in hand. You have to foster and support both of those things, because if you are only focused on one and not giving enough due diligence to the other, you're going to have a hard time really getting where you want to go on either side.
100%. It goes back to that whole like black and white mindset, and like Erin, you talk all about like if a client asks you, can I have a glass of wine? Well, of course you can have a glass of wine. Let's talk about this though a little bit more. Like, what is this glass of wine bringing you? It's bringing me relaxation and joy and happiness and smiles and laughs and, quality time with someone. Yes, that's health to me. So like really, working in that gray area and letting people not feel like, oh, I have to work out 100 days in a row. And, and that's hard with athletes with that type A, like, this is how I became successful, I need to maintain this. It's like, well, it's not sustainable.
You can't. Yeah.
Right.
That crush hustle mentality, which so many people are, don't get me started on that.
I mean, there's an old adage for a reason that says what got you here might not necessarily be what you need to get you where you want to go. Right. At some point, people plateau. And that happens with health. It happens with weight loss. It happens with strength. It happens with anything you're trying to continue to grow on. What got you to where you are today? Awesome. I love it. I'm grateful. Thank you. I learned a lot. but I'm not getting anywhere. So something has got to change. If you continue to exhibit the exact same behaviors and you're still not getting anywhere, you've got to change, and you've got to refocus and find something else. So, and part of that is definitely a mental game, for sure. I love it. So you, my friend, are all over Instagram too. Got lots of followers there. Where can people find you? What are your handles? After we just talked about how social media was so bad, let's find out where they can reach you, because we know everybody's still on it.
That's been hard to negotiate that, because I really hate social media, and I always felt, I don't know, I just felt icky and uncomfortable with it. But I've really consolidated it. I made my Instagram grow with Chloe, and I'm just using it as a way to send this messaging out. And if like how I operate now is, if it is wellness or performance, I post it, and if it's not, I don't. And that has made it a lot easier for me to manage. But it's Grow with Chloe is my Instagram, and then that's also my website. So
too easy. Cool. Well, this is great. Like, congrats on like finally coming to identify your niche. I mean, obviously it seems obvious, like your niche seems obvious, but it took you a little while to get there. That's the journey we all have to go through when we start any kind of entrepreneurship gig, is like figuring out what's the space we're going to occupy. It may be obvious. It may take us all a while to get there. Super pumped for this. I think the world needs mental skills training, athletes and non-athletes, for crying out loud, honestly.
Yeah. And I know Erin and I knew you the day you started, right? Erin, I think, met you first. So to see the growth in you in just the last few years, and, not that I did not think you were confident before. I did. I didn't meet you and think, wow, that girl lacks confidence. Not at all. Not at all. But there's a noticeable difference to me in your own, maybe it's not confidence. It might be just acceptance.
Yeah.
And kind of at peace with where you are now. I can feel that in you. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I definitely think there was a lot of, everyone that talks to me like, well, duh, you're working with athletes. But but I had such a hard time, like 3 years worth of time of being avoiding and pushing that, and like trying to not do that, because I still had my own stuff to work out with my experience. I
think a big part of your growth, if I can just tell you, is that you shed a lot of stuff. Like, a big part of your growth was in shedding things that didn't serve you, identities that weren't authentic to you. So that's often overlooked. A part of growth is like getting rid of shit, 100%.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's interesting too, when it comes to coaching, and my role here at our institute as admissions director, again, we get a lot of this imposter syndrome stuff. And what I think, when coaches have a hard time launching is because, or they have a hard time finding clients, is because they're not true to that message. They, in their minds, feel like they haven't accomplished enough to be an expert in something. Right. And it's being able to switch that mindset to be like, of course you've graduated from a program. There's something that brought you here. You have to embrace that and let go of all the other crap that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. And it's interesting because, I've worked for Primal Health Coach for almost 4 years, and I had the blueprint in a lot of ways. And I'm like, was banging my head, like, how am I not connecting the dots? And then I just think it does come back to that work on yourself, and really, and it happens when it happens, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, how am I not? Like, I've been in this atmosphere with these role models like yourselves, and I feel so fortunate. Like, why is it not clicking? And it's like, what? It just happens when it happens. And I don't know how else. I've still have been writing about that and trying to figure that out, because it's interesting. We see our students go through it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you stuck with it, and you kept asking the question, and you kept working at it. And then finally one day it clicks, right?
I think you said it. I think you have to just keep going and keep just show up. So.
Yep.
I love it.
Awesome. All right. Awesome pep talk from a coach that made it happen. So that's going to resonate with a lot of people listening who are maybe in these early stages and like, I think I have an idea of what I want to do, but I'm not totally sure. And just kind of, it happens, right? Yeah. Cool.
And just one more time, everyone's an athlete if you have a body. So I know I'm talking a lot about athletes, but I think that, the mental skills and the coaching can can help anyone. So just don't be intimidated by that, because I'm sure everyone, like I said, you're a whole being, and that's what I want to foster in my practice. So
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Chloe.
bye. Thank you guys.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've been listening at Health Coach Radio, you'll know that we're all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches, but most importantly, helping to further legitimize this exploding industry. Erin and I have disclosed often that we're on the faculty of the Primal Health Coach Institute, founded by none other than the health and wellness legend Mark Sisson. And we've interviewed dozens of guests from just about every different health coaching program you can think of, and who practice in just about any conceivable way you can think of. But our allegiance is to the health coaching industry in its totality, first and foremost. It's our desire to continuously and unapologetically lift and promote this industry that nudged us to create this podcast for you in the first place. It's this same yearning that encouraged us to take the educational offering at our health coaching school to the next level. We are so proud to offer the Primal Health Coach Level 2 certification course, which, when combined with our primary course, the Primal Health Coach certification course, not only satisfies the educational requirements to sit for the board exam, but is specifically designed to teach advanced coaching mastery. You will work closely with a small class of peers through this 12-week, very intensive, live online classroom experience to learn how to execute a coaching relationship that is truly transformational. You'll learn and practice how to ask powerful questions, what it means to hold space for your clients, but most importantly, how to actually do it. You'll learn about the craft of motivational interviewing and the nuances of habit change, goal setting, and accountability, and how to nurture your client's own inner knowing, their intuition, and their own self-efficacy, so that they will graduate from your care a truly transformed person. You want a big, successful, powerful coaching practice. And maybe you're devouring our episodes looking for the silver bullet that's going to launch your business into the upper echelons. We've said it a million times and we'll say it again. Your coaching skills are what will make or break you and set you apart for success in this field. So if you're looking to level up your coaching skills, and maybe dial up your credential and become a board-eligible health coach, look no further. You can learn more about PHCI's Level 2 program at primalhealthcoach.com/level 2. But if you would value talking to a real person about your path to being a masterful coach and perhaps a board-certified coach, book some time with me personally. You can access my calendar at primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or just call me. You can reach me at 844-307-7662. Thank you for listening to Health Coach Radio, and I hope I get to talk to you soon.